As you stare off the edge of your spaceship, you see something. What could it be? What the heck is that thing? It's a magic card, and it's an insect, and it's our new deck tech for today. Sorry, Lord Windgrace, it's our new Jund Commander, Szarel Genesis Shepherd. This Jund Commander lets us play lands from our graveyard, and whenever we sacrifice another permanent during our turn, we get to put counters on another creature equal to Szarel's power. In this deck tech, I'm going to go over the three main strategies. The first one is sacrificing our lands, the second one is paying it off, and finally, a few Landfall cards that will be a lot of fun. So let's dive right in. We're going to start off with a classic you've never seen before, Army Ants. For 1 black-red, you get a 1/1 insect that lets you sacrifice a land to destroy target land. So we can sacrifice our lands for value and destroy our opponent's best land so they don't even have a shot. Braid's Arisen Nightmare is always going to get us a card because we're always going to sacrifice a land at our end step. Our opponents will not be brave enough to sacrifice their lands, so we're going to get a ton of cards and they'll lose a ton of life. Of course I included a game changer. I'm a degenerate, and I included crop rotation. For 1 green, you get to sack a land, search out your best land, and put it right onto the battlefield. Does it sound like a fantasy to sack a land at every upkeep so you can keep triggering your commander? It's not a fantasy, it's a reality with destructive flow. And on top of that, your opponents have to sacrifice 2. That's a win-win. If crop rotation grew up to be a strapping young lad, that'd be Elvish Reclaimer. For 1 green mana, it's a 1/2 that lets you sacrifice a land and search the library for the best land and put it right into play. It's tapped though, so he kind of got weak with age. Intish Restoration might be the best card in Lord of the Rings. You can argue with me in the comments below, but it lets you sack a land, then search your library for 2 basic lands and put them onto the battlefield tapped. However, if you have a big creature, you get 3 lands instead. Harrow proves there's power creep. It does the same thing as Intish Restoration, but you don't get that bonus of having a big creature. You still get 2 lands and still get the sack though. Next up, we have an overplayed commander. That's Corvold, Fakehurst King. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, we get to sacrifice a permanent, and when we sack permanents, we draw cards, so even more advantage in our strategy. Reprocess lets us turn all of our worthless lands into new fresh cards in our hand that we won't be able to play because we're out of lands. Luckily, our commander lets us play our lands from our graveyard, and we might still have a shot, but I love some card advantage. Next up, we have a functional reprint of Harrow. That's Rolling Regrowth. It does the same exact thing, still an instant, and you may be saying, why didn't you put them on the same slide? Because I wanted to pad my runtime to get more ads and get more money. I'm a greedy prick. Next up, there's Steve. Steve lives a simple life of blocking for 1 turn, then getting sacrificed to get you a land onto the battlefield. Simple life, but big effect. Yet again, we have another Harrow effect. This time it's Springbloom Druid. It's on a body, does the same exact thing, at sorcery speed because it's a creature, but at least you got a chump blocker for later. Now it's time to create some controversy. We're going to use a card off the reserve list, and a card that is too expensive, but could be reprinted, but Wizards isn't brave enough to do it. That's Squandered Resources. For a black-green, you get an enchantment that lets you sacrifice lands to add mana to your mana pool. Our commander's ability is quite powerful, so we have to keep it protected. That's where Sylvan Safekeeper comes in. For 1 green mana, you get a 1/1 human wizard that lets you sacrifice lands to give creatures Shroud. Our commander will not get targeted. It's time to get some massive card advantage with the Gitrog monster. This frog has Death Touch, which doesn't really matter. It makes us sacrifice lands at our upkeep, but it lets us play an additional land. And whenever a land enters our graveyard from anywhere, we get a card, and we'll be getting a lot of cards. We also have a lady with snakes for her hair. That's Vraska Golgari Queen. This planeswalker lets us sacrifice permanents to draw cards. It's a removal spell, and it gives us a way to close out the game with this ultimate we'll probably never get to. Also, we're including broken free spells. This one's Zurin Orb. Costs 0 mana, lets us sacrifice lands to gain life. More powerful than Deadly Rollick, trust me. Now that we've had a lot of fun sacrificing all of our lands and making it look like we can't win the game, let me show you how we're going to pay that strategy off. Here might be the best card out of Karlov Manor. This lackluster set gave us a great uncommon in the form of Aftermath Analyst. It lets you mill 3 cards when it ETBs. However, we get to sacrifice it to bring all of our lands back from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped so we can keep sacking them. We need to have some redundancy as well. Our commander will get removed and removed often. That's why we have Conduit of Worlds. It lets us play lands from our graveyard, and we can tap it to choose a non-land permanent card and play that as well. We also need payoffs for all that sacrificing we're doing. That's where Havoc Jester comes in. It's a 5 mana 5/5, and whenever we sack a permanent, it deals 1 damage to any target. But we do have a better option coming up next. That upgrade is Mayhem Devil. Costs a lot less mana, and it's even more effective because it counts our opponent's sacrifices as well. We also had to include another nasty broken insect. This is Mazarek Krull Death Priest. It's a 5 mana 2/2, which sounds terrible. However, whenever a player sacrifices another permanent, you get a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. There'll be so much sacrificing on our end, our creatures will get huge and allow Szarel to put more counters on other creatures. I also had to include a big dumb creature in here, and this one's Multani Yavamaya's Avatar. It's a 6 mana star. It gets huge for each land in the battlefield and each land in your graveyard, and you can return lands to your hand for that landfall strategy we've got coming up next. 6 is an all-star in this deck. It gives you a mill effect when it attacks and allows you to return a land from those cards and put it into your hand, and it also gives every non-land permanent card in our graveyard retrace. So one of those big threats we have gets removed, we can get it right back with 6. Sometimes we want to bring back all those sacrifice lands all at once. We can do that with Splendid Reclamation. For 4 mana, we return all land cards from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Think of the landfall triggers. Hands down, our absolute best payoff is Titania, Protector of Orgoth. This 5 mana 5/3 lets you return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield when it ETBs, and whenever a land we control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, we get a 5/3 elemental. So we're going to keep sacking, build a huge board, and win with overwhelming force. I heard you like convoluted strategies that require multiple cards and is really hard to pull off. That's where we have Titania, Voice of Gaia, and Orgoth, Sanctum of Nature. Titania lets us gain life whenever our lands get put into the graveyard, and Orgoth lets us make bear tokens. Super powerful, right? No. However, they meld into the ultimate card for our deck. That's Titania, Gaia Incarnate. This card has all the keywords and is big based on the number of lands we have, and allows us to return all of our land cards from the graveyard to the battlefield. On top of that, we can turn our lands into creatures so they're easier to remove. What a blast. Now that we went over all of the payoffs for having land cards in our graveyard, let's get into some powerful effects called Landfall. You may be saying to yourself, Avenger of Zendikar is outclassed in 2025. You may be right, but I still love this card, and I think it will still work in this deck. When it ETBs, you get a 0/1 plant for each land you control, and whenever a land ETBs, you put a 1/1 counter on each plant you control. I can feel the comments typing below. This card doesn't say Landfall on it, but it's a Landfall card. I can prove that. It's Greensleeves Moro Sorcerer. Whenever a land ETBs, you get a 3/3 Green Badger, and this card gets huge based on the number of lands you have. Not every Magic card comes with a child, but Iridescent Vinelasher does. It's a 1 black mana lizard, and whenever a land ETBs, it deals 1 damage to target opponent, and it has an offspring cost, so you can make that little lizard baby. Wizards of the Coast loves certain Magic characters besides Chandra. She gets a ton of cards. Ob Nixilis also gets a lot of cards. This time we're using Ob Nixilis the Fallen. He has a landfall ability. Whenever a land ETBs, target player loses 3 life, and then we get to put 3 counters on him. He's going to get huge and drain our opponents out. You may have realized by now that most Lands Matters decks have an elemental sub-theme. If you haven't, I'm sorry. Omnath Locust the Rage is one of these. Whenever a land ETBs, we get a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token, and whenever another one of our elementals dies, we get to deal 3 damage to any target. It's time to put a cactus in our deck. It's Sabotender. It's a 2 mana 2/1 with reach, which I don't think matters. It has a landfall ability. Whenever a land we control ETBs, deals 1 damage to each opponent. So if we keep spamming lands, we can burn them out. I'm the most unoriginal Magic the Gathering content creator out there. That's why I included the staple in every lands deck. That's Scoot Swarm. It's a 3 mana 1/1 insect that gives us a ton of token copies of itself, and it goes exponential, so that means the math gets big, and I can't calculate it. Spitfire Lagak is basically Sabotender. It costs more mana, it's a lizard, not a cactus, and it has the same landfall ability. I want you to picture what you think is the most degenerate creature card in this entire deck. Now picture having a million of them. We can make that happen with Springheart and Antuco. You can bestow it onto that creature, and when a land ETBs, you can pay 2 mana and get a copy of that creature. Our last piece of landfall tech is another Edge of Eternities card. That's Tanuk, Memorial Ensign. It's a 3 mana 2/4 Kavu. I didn't think those would come back. Its landfall ability is whenever a land ETBs, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. If it's resolved 2 times, you get a card, and after that, it still keeps dealing damage. That wraps it up. As you can see, Szarel is going to be the new Jund Lands Commander for sure, and I think it will be a lot of fun. So if you really like this deck and you want to see the full deck list, it's right there on Moxfield, links in the description. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.